Hello, nasties. Today we have the final episode in our series on menstruation and periods. I talked to Hallie Mazurkiewicz, an entrepreneur who turned her own period story into a business, Lunar Wild, which provides personalized, curated period boxes for people who have periods, whether it's their first, their 100th, or their 1000th. Before we get to the episode, we want to let you know that we'll be taking a bit of a break starting after the holidays and returning in March, just in time for Women's History Month, with a slightly different format and a new season of the She Who Persisted podcast. We hope you enjoyed this interview, and we hope that it inspires you to think of ways to turn your own experiences and maybe your own period story into your passion. If you're interested in purchasing a period box, either for a first period or to reclaim your period in a positive light, listeners can use the offer code NASTY at checkout for $10 off a Lunar Wild period gift box. Thanks for listening and enjoy the episode.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
Thank you for joining us, Hallie. I first want to talk to you a little bit about your company and why you started it, and then I want to get into a little bit about your menstruation story.
Excellent.
So your company is Lunar Wild. What can you tell us about it, and why did you start it?
So I started Lunar Wild just over a year ago, and it was during a time where I personally was going through a lot of transition. And I'd actually taken a solo trip to the desert in California. And I was just spending some time alone in the desert, really kind of considering what it was I wanted to do with my life and how I could pivot to be of more service and find more fulfillment in helping people. When I came back from that trip, I took out a suitcase that I keep under my bed, and I have kept under my bed for 20 years, of journals. So I have journals dating all the way back to 1998 in my little tiny 8-year-old handwriting. And
that's so cute.
Yeah. And so from time to time, I take them out and I read my own stories about my life. And because I had just gone on this very transformational trip and I was doing a lot of soul searching, I took these journals out once again, and I said to myself, okay, what are my gifts? What is my inner child all about? And what can I do to help people? And it was in doing that and reading through those journals that I came across a journal entry from when I was about 12 years old and I first started spotting. Mm-hmm. And I had recounted this event in detail and how my mother had come to me and she had said that she'd been waiting for this moment since the day I was born. Since she knew she was having a daughter, she couldn't wait for me to start my period. And she got very emotional. She said how proud of me she was. And she explained some things that I could expect with womanhood just around the corner. She told me that just like the moon, my body would wax and wane. So I would go through periods every single month of lightness and darkness, of feeling really great and energetic, and my skin would be glowing and I would feel like I could conquer the world. And then I would also experience times where I felt really inward and I felt like being alone, or I felt like writing or being creative or being introspective. And that all of that entire scope was part of the experience of womanhood, and that the shadows had just as much learning and just as much merit in my life as the times of brightness. So, yeah.
No, this is amazing. It's funny. Okay, are you a Californian?
I'm not. No, I was born in upstate New York.
Okay. Thank you. Because the thing is, I am a Californian, and I can imagine listeners listening to this and thinking, "Oh my God, that's so California," because I can see that. I mean, that is not at all my period experience. My mother just kind of put pads in my closet and was like, "Have at it," and we didn't even talk about it. So, but it's definitely a really specific, I almost want to say like your mom is probably second wave feminist.
Yeah, I would say that. She would probably agree.
Yeah, it's definitely like from a specific kind of political, personal moment of being able to have those conversations with your daughter and to think about a woman's body in a way that is to celebrate it and to celebrate it in a way that connects it with nature and connects it with creation. And I think that's amazing. I don't. My family's not like that, and they don't like talk about things like that. But I can see a lot of my friends in California having moms like that and having those conversations. And it's just so touching and wonderful to hear that people had those experiences.
Yeah. And well, it's really interesting looking at my mother's experience herself. I mean, she grew up on a dairy farm in rural Wisconsin, and she was from a very much like working class family. She had to work several jobs to put herself through college. And I know for a fact those were not discussions that were happening in her household. So she, to me, is an example of a woman who made choices in her life, chose a path that in a way gives other women permission to elevate themselves as well. And so she then went on to become a chiropractor. She became very involved in a lot of like natural, holistic lifestyle sort of choices. And she became really fascinated with Native American spirituality as well. And those were stories that she infused into my first period or my first moon ceremony as well, because she had a ceremony for me. Ultimately, she gathered some really important women from my life growing up around me, and they held a special circle for me. And in that circle, they shared their blessings for me for an abundant womanhood. They gave me gifts like jewelry and chocolate and essential oils. And I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget how special I felt standing in the center of this circle with all these really powerful, strong women with their eyes shining at me and all the hope in the world. It was just like something I wanted other girls to feel that.
Oh, absolutely. It's like something out of a movie. I mean, I feel like your mom and her friends were something out of this like amazing feminist movie where
it's like the Yaya sisterhood.
Exactly. I mean, and the thing that's so great about it is that she took this moment to kind of change the dialogue, right? I mean, she didn't have that experience, but she knew that she wanted you to have that experience. And so she did what, we on the podcast have been advocating for a while, like talk about periods, like talk about menstruation. And if we start talking about it in a really non-taboo, non-hushed tones kind of way and are like really proud of it, then it stops being something that people have to be ashamed about.
Absolutely, Elizabeth. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's like humans all over the world. I mean, we have a lot of experiences that are shared and a lot of experiences that are unique to us. But a first period is something that is happening for roughly 50% of the entire population of the entire globe, inevitably, biologically. And why then are we not looking at that poignant event and considering the emotional, the psychological implications of this event and how it's going to affect the trajectory of these young women's lives for the rest of it?
Yeah. And when I think about, kids these days who are, transitioning. And so now you have a boy who has had been born biologically a female, but is transitioning to becoming a male. And like that little boy now is dealing with a lot of the same kind of taboo things. And like, that is like a whole nother level of dealing with shame and social stigma that, the intersection of those various kind of social stigmas then become, like something that I don't even think we know how to talk about yet.
Right. I mean, the fact that we're just even learning how to do this with with people who feel comfortable in the gender that, the sex that they were born into. There's just so much more here to unpack. And that's something too in my business, even though we're still in our first year, that I'm constantly considering. It's like, okay, how can we look at this? How can we make it more inclusive day by day? So I agree with you. That's super important.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right. We haven't even figured out how to make cis girls feel comfortable about their periods. How are we going to make trans kids, regardless, comfortable with periods when they're experiencing them and it doesn't necessarily match up with how they feel in their bodies? Or gosh, that's so hard. Oh gosh, there's so much to unpack there.
There is. And I think the problem is sometimes we look at it and we go, oh my gosh, we have so much work to do. And, if we're focusing too much on girls, then we're ignoring people who are not cisgender. But I don't really believe that, because I think that everything we do to raise awareness is important.
No, I agree.
So even if my focus is girls mainly, I think that's raising awareness for periods in general. And I would love if someone reached out to me and was like, listen, I have this trans individual who would like a box. I would totally love to make them a special box. That would be such an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about the period box that you got as a kid.
So as a kid, I actually didn't really receive a period box. What I did receive from my mom was just kind of your average box of light, junior tampons. So we had this beautiful talk. She gave me this little starter kit, and I put it in my closet because I didn't actually start my period, I think, for 3 years after I was spotting. So I was a really late bloomer. But when I did finally start, that's when she had this women's circle for me with all the gifts. So when I was reading back on this journal entry, recalling how excited I was to just open this regular box of tampons, I remember I would peek in it and kind of look at the little information booklet and get so excited to be able to try a tampon. I thought that is so funny. I wonder if there's something out there that exists that is very intentionally curated with all organic, eco-sourced products. Something that is not just the bare minimum. It's not just the menstrual products. It's really a treasure chest. And it's an experience saying that you matter, that this is special, that this is normal, and that womanhood is worth celebrating.
And so it didn't exist, obviously.
It didn't exist. Nothing out there is really quite like this. There are other first period starter kits, but they're not focused around the experience like this is.
Yeah, we just talked to a college student who is working with NGOs to send menstrual products and educational materials to women in rural India. And I think about that and the comparison of what you're doing here. And, they haven't gotten any education at all. They don't even know what a period is. That when it happens, they think that there's something wrong with their bodies. And we take for granted really that there is sex education and education about your bodies in school. And that's just not the case all over the world. This is taking it that this is happening to your body, but you feel ashamed of it. And that is something that happens in the United States with women's bodies. A lot, but particularly around periods. And this kind of just kicks it up a notch. I mean, the way that you're thinking about it is let's celebrate our cycles. Let's celebrate menstruation. Let's celebrate something that's unique to people who have cycles.
Right. Well, I mean, actually, Elizabeth, I used to work as a teacher in the school. So sex education. Yeah. I worked with fifth graders. And so I firsthand got to experience what this phase of life was like for not only girls, but for boys as well. And it's a deeply tumultuous time, psychologically, physically, emotionally. And our youth, they really just aren't being given the tools and the skills that they need, I think, to really thrive in this kind of time of personal alchemy. And there's this interesting thing that's occurring where parents are really feeling like they're putting pressure on the school to improve their programs. And this is really like a school issue, and schools should be talking about sex ed. And some schools are really feeling like, well, no, this is a personal family matter. Every family, based on their beliefs,